Well, let's move on to the big story that we are tracking. 108 economists and social scientists have lashed out at the government and have said that India's economic statistics is in shambles. In an appeal to the government, they have said that it's imperative that the agencies associated with collection and dissemination of statistics like CSO and NSSO are not subject to political interference and therefore enjoy total credibility. Shireen Bhan spoke to JNU Professor Himanshu on what he makes of this. Here are the conversation.
108 economists and social scientists from across the world have written an open letter questioning the credibility of data that's being put out by various government bodies. The statement says economic statistics in shambles, need to raise a voice. This is an appeal from 108 economists and social scientists across the world. One of the signatories of this open statement, Himanshu, Professor JNU, joins us. Himanshu, many thanks for joining us. There's 108 of you economists and social scientists, not just from India but across the world, that are raising concerns about the credibility of data that's being put out by government organizations or data that's not being made available. What's the chief issue that you have?
I mean, this is something this has been going on for now, at least in this government, for the last ever since the government came in, but it has become much more politicized, and I'm using the word very carefully. You have seen this happening in terms of employment data, not just the NSSO data, which is suppressed and has not been released even today, and also about the Labor Bureau data that was supposed to come out, and that was also withheld. It has happened with the GDP data. It has not been, I mean, you get multiple estimates of the back series that has come out. NITI Aayog suddenly brings out a different kind of one, contrary to what has been approved by the National Statistical Commission. You have seen huge revisions in GDP numbers of the demonetization year by 1.1%. I mean, these are things which are obviously putting a question mark. We still don't believe that the basic core of the statistical system is compromised. The NSSO and CSO have been doing a wonderful job, and they have their credibility is not at stake. But the kind of interference that is coming from the government is definitely putting a question mark on the credibility of the official statistics. The kind of interference that has come from NITI Aayog and other bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
So Himanshu, you're saying that at the crux of it, you're saying at the crux of it, the Indian statistical bodies, you're not doubting their credibility, but you said that you choose to use this word very carefully. The politicization is what concerns you.
Exactly.
Now,
I'm not
outside of the fact that
I mean, I'm not doubting the core competence.
What are the chief concerns there? Because you're talking about the fact that the NITI Aayog was present when the GDP back series was presented. I mean, what exactly is your issue with how the government seems to be, in your assessment, trying to influence data?
They are certainly trying to influence data, and it's happening in different ways. And they are trying to either suppress the data, and this has happened on many, many indicators. I mean, the only some indicators is what is mentioned in the statement, but this has happened across statements on agricultural statistics, on statistics on employment, on statistics on poverty, for example. It has not been nobody is even talking about those issues. GDP data is there, even farmer suicide data, crime data. I mean, you look at the number of data sets that we are talking about, which were proactively being released without any government interference, are now being withheld or being questioned by the government themselves, by government agencies. The CEO of the NITI Aayog is coming out and questioning the NSS sampling methodology, which has been perfected for the last 70 years. Nobody has questioned these issues. I mean, so in a sense, there is an attempt to confuse, the attempt to suppress, an attempt to bring out a different kind of narrative which suits the political powers today.
All right, then that was the discussion about the economists raising concerns about these statistics. But let's stay with the macro data. As we head closer to elections, we spoke to experts on what they make of the growth numbers during the BJP government's tenure and if the growth rate is sustainable or not. Listen in.
I don't think that at current levels of productivity and given current institutional arrangements within which the economy functions, that it would be prudent to even aim for 10% growth or even 9% growth. I simply do not think that is sustainable. If demonetization was self-inflicted, then there is a growth price to pay, as the economic survey said. But then one has to recognize that demonetization clearly had explicit political goals, which seem to be very popular in people's heads, such as doing away with corruption, getting rid of black money, And obviously, when you do these things, there may be a negative impact to the economy. And therefore, one has to, leave it to people's political judgment whether demonetization achieved those beta goals that government, today uses to justify the measure.
The government has these three macroeconomic targets, which is 4% inflation, 3.5% fiscal deficit, and a 2% current account deficit, which is what we believe is sustainable sort of macro stability, then growth seems to be around 6.5–7%. That's the sustainable rate of growth. Now, it's not bad, it's not great. The question really is that, is this all we can do if we need to maintain macro stability? So the question is, how do you push potential growth out from, say, 7% to 9%? And perhaps that's what we'll come to later. It's, whether the supply side reforms were adequate to push that growth.